transfer portal officially opens today, and all eyes are on two key offensive stars, hoping they stay with the Kansas State Wildcats.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, the transfer portal is here. We are in that new window, folks, where the season is mostly behind us. We're going to finish that off today with some announcements that we heard over the weekend. But the biggest thing to talk about today, and really for the rest of the year of 2024, is the transfer portal. The portal officially opens, and the rest of the month is going to be wild. And two key names are going to be on a high alert across Manhattan, across the Kansas State community as we open today's window. And we're going to get to those in just a second, but I think you know where I'm getting to on this one. But first, according to On3, there are only 3 names from Kansas State in the portal, but we know that's going to be more. Tre Spivey announced over the weekend that he is going to enter the portal as well. I did talk about that in a short, if you want to check that out on the channel. And then Willis. We also saw offensive lineman Willis hopping in as well. So overall, we know that there's at least 5 going into the portal for the Kansas State Wildcats. And some of these names, especially Tre Spivey, is one that I wasn't expecting to hear. At least I didn't want to hear. That's probably the best way to say that, right? I did not want to hear his name being called or saying that he was going to enter, because I just saw so much potential in Tre Spivey. Because he's just such a dynamic player, right? And what we started to see towards the second half of the season with him, especially with some other names that were potentially going to leave, and we saw some rumors about some other big star wide receivers potentially leaving, we thought that Tre Spivey could be the guy moving forward. But that's not the case. He's going to enter the transfer portal. So as of right now, there are multiple players that are going to leave the portal. And actually looking at it now, no, it still remains at 3. So 3 players according to On3 right now. They haven't updated it with the official other names of Tre Spivey and Willis as well. But Taquan Robertson, the backup quarterback, he entered the portal on the 2nd. Justin Wolf, senior, he's going to the tight end. He's going to enter the portal. And Jordan Dunbar, redshirt junior cornerback. So as of right now, from what we know, we have a quarterback that entered the portal, a tight end, a wide receiver, an offensive lineman, and a cornerback. So 4 on the offensive side, 1 on the defensive side. So right off the bat, you're going to tell that we are looking for some more offensive sides. We're going to get to that in just a minute, what we should pay attention to. How many more are going to enter, right? That is going to be the biggest question of the day and of the next rest of the month, really. How many more are going to enter? Now, they don't have to just enter today, but you're going to see a mass amount of players across the nation put their names in. If you haven't already seen it across social media already, a lot of players were already saying they intend to enter the transfer portal over the weekend. They can officially drop their name and they can officially be entered in December 9th today. But how many more, right? We don't know what exactly that's going to happen, but we are hoping that 2 of these names don't happen. 2 names we'll definitely hope we don't hear are wide receiver Jayce Brown and running back Dylan Edwards. Well, first off, we're going to talk with Jayce Brown because we already lost Tre Spivey. Losing Jayce Brown would be an absolutely just devastating shot for this Kansas State Wildcats offense. I mentioned in the show, just our last episode on Friday, how this wide receiver group could be the best in the Big 12 if it was led by Jayce Brown and Tre Spivey. I just finished recording that episode. I mean, I think it was fresh. I think it was still premiering over on YouTube while Tre Spivey put in his announcement on social media saying he's going to enter the transfer portal. So this is the first time I've actually had a conversation with all of you to to discuss since that has happened, and I still think that there's a path for Jayce Brown to lead this offense and the wide receiver room and still be the best wide receivers room in the Big 12. Now, he's going to need a little bit of help, and that means that they're going to have to bring in some more wide receivers. I talked about some potential options on last episode. There was already 4 offers from Kansas State offering different wide receivers. And the fact that Tre Spivey's already gone, one of those wide receivers needs to come in. They definitely need to get some work done. I have some faith in the coaching staff of Kansas State that they can cook, they can get this done. But I don't want them to have to go look for 2, right? I don't want them to have to go and must go and get 2, meaning that Jayce Brown also leaves the transfer portal because he has rumored to be leaving. Before Farmageddon, before the game against Iowa State, there was a rumor that came out. He was the first rumor of all Kansas State Wildcats that he was going to enter the transfer portal. Now, he did squash that a little bit before the game. He put out a social media post saying that he was going to, all eyes or all his focus was on Iowa State. He didn't say that the rumors were false, but he did say that he was focused only on the game. And that was the case. He definitely proved us that he was focused on that game because he was fantastic in that game against Iowa State. 3 receptions for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 65-yard bomb. And he was just absolutely impressive. Overall on the season, Jayce Brown had 42 receptions, 763 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That means that was an average yards per catch around 18, just over 18, actually. Sophomore wide receiver out of Florida, 6 foot, 179. I mean, he's got speed. He's a fantastic outside threat. We saw that. We didn't see it enough in the season, but that is something that we hope to see more in 2025. He's very good friends with Avery Johnson, the quarterback for the Wildcats. Hopefully that relationship can help him stick around. He has put out some cryptic tweets over the last week. Still don't know what's going on with those emojis, right? He's got some 2 bones on the emojis. If you know about those, what that means, let me know in the comment description below. I'm still working on my emoji dictionary right now. I can't find what the 2 bones means. So let me know what that means in the comment description below if you know, because I do not. But regardless, I need Jayce Brown to stick around. We do. We need to have him lead this offense, be the number 1 receiver in 2025 for Kansas State, because what they just brought in that recruiting class, and a guy like Lincoln Cure, if he sees some time on the field, and Keegan Johnson, what he can do as well, and what we're going to talk about with that second name that we're going to discuss, and Dylan Edwards, if they stick around, this team can be a heck of a lot better than 8-4 in 2025. And just adding a couple more pieces in the transfer portal, which they're going to add at least some, then there's a lot of things to be excited about. Talking about Dylan Edwards, because that's the next one on the list here. There are some rumors that he is just on the fence. He's 50-50. Now, I'm not sure if that is because he's waiting on the status of DJ Giddens. Right now, he has not announced that he will be entering the NFL draft, but it's all likelihood that he will. So he probably will not be returning. There is a chance that he comes back, but I'm not going to put my hopes up, because I do think that he has what it takes to be an NFL talent running back at this moment right now, and could get drafted if he enters his name into the NFL draft. And that's what it's all about, right? Getting back into the draft. So I think he's going to head out. I don't know if that's the reason why he's on the fence, or if he wants to ensure he's going to be the guy in 2025. I don't know if that means that he wants to move down to the G5 level, or if he doesn't think that he will be the number 1 at Kansas State. I think he personally will be. And he didn't get as much carries that he wanted to this past season, only 56 carries for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did average over 6 yards a carry when he touched the ball. And that just tells you right there how explosive he is when he touches the football. I'm not even going to talk about the aspects of how great he was on special teams, because if he does return in 2025, he might not be that big of a role on special teams, because he's probably going to be your number 1 running back on the team. Now, he still could be a special teams guy. He still could be your kick returner, punt returner, however you want to see it, because he's dominant when he does that. Regardless, Dylan Edwards, I think if he does return, I think he is your number 1 running back. And I think he can still be the guy at a Power 4 level. And the fact that he is a Kansas native, I think that helps. I don't know why he would want to to leave. I don't know if there's any other things underlying. I don't know if the money talks. I'm not really sure, but hopefully his name does not leave as well. Dylan Edwards could be a stud with this offense. I really do think so. Just the small things that we saw with him this past season were incredible, and he was just absolutely electric. Now, he did battle with some injuries towards the end of the season, and he didn't get a lot of carries over the last couple games. You're gonna see that. Now, maybe that is affecting the fact that how he feels heading into 2025. Hopefully, maybe the bowl game can fix that if he decides to stay in here. Because there's a lot to talk about with this team. There really is. There's a lot of things to worry about, and it would just be such a huge loss if both of these guys left, even if just one of them left. So next, with a certain new rule, and this is another thing. There's a brand new thing that we need to discuss as well. There's a certain new rule across the country that could actually slow the Wildcats down in the transfer portal heading into 2025. We're going to talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off. 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. I know if you're looking for a great holiday gift, if you're looking to add to making sure that the stuff on the holiday table looks good, what better than having 50% off plus an extra $30 using promo code Locked On College? With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experience and gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoroughly curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com with an extra $30 off using promo code COLLEGE. And welcome on back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao. And there's just a lot of things to talk about with this transfer portal. But one of the things that's really not being paid attention to, at least from some folks on the side that might need to be paid attention to heading into this transfer portal, a brand new rule entering the 2025. And that is that the roster size heading into the new season needs to be down to 105. Now, that might seem like a lot of players, but that is definitely a drop down from what has happened in the past. So how active will Kansas State be in the portal? I mean, that's a really good question as we head into the new season. As the roster sits right now, a little quick snapshot. I mean, if we look at just what happened over the past week, 26 men are coming in from the recruiting class of 2025. As of right now, we know that only 5 are on the way out from the transfer portal. We know there's going to be more, heading into the moment. We know that's going to happen. It's expected that more players are going to enter the portal. More might enter the portal as well, because if you want to, the 105 might actually change that. That might be a bigger thing for G5 teams. G5 teams might be better moving into 2025 because more players at the Power 4 level are going to have to enter the portal because they're going to lose their spot from this 105. It might help the G5, might help the FCS teams, but we'll see what happens moving forward. Regardless, on the Kansas State side, 105 roster size. We have 26 men coming in from the 2025 recruiting class. 5 are on the way out. You know that more is going to happen. And how much room is for portal ads, right? Are we going to see 6? Is 6 the number we're going to see from this window? Or is like what we've seen from normal, 7 to 10 players likely in this window? As of right now, I think the needs for this team, offensive line, I think is one of the first ones you have to focus on. A lot of players have left. Now, there's a couple players who are trying to look for an extra year of eligibility and waivers, or see if that's going to happen. That has not been addressed or been announced that will happen yet. Hopefully, we get an answer for that during this window, or at least during early enough in the year. Maybe it doesn't have to happen during this window, but early enough in 2025 that the recruiting class, or the recruiting staff, can go ahead and make those potential needs, or you just expect them to be declined and you go ahead and make those needs regardless. I think that might even be the best bet And hopefully that's what Kansas State's thinking moving into this transfer portal need. Offensive line is a huge need for Kansas State. And not because they were terrible, because they were still very good. I know we've discussed in the past and on social media before the show even started throughout the whole season how the offensive line just wasn't up to the standards of Kansas State in 2024, but they still won awards as one of the best offensive lines in the country. So I think that's just a little bit of our bias as fans saying that this offensive line doesn't up the standards, but it's still good enough to win awards across the country. So we're in a good spot right now, and Connor Riley does a great job with this offensive line. And that's one thing that you cannot take away from him. As his bread and butter, he is fantastic with that offensive line. Hopefully he stays on the field. I think we've noticed that, and I think that will remain true in 2025. Him staying on the field with the offensive line makes that unit better and overall makes the offense better. So even if he does remain as offensive coordinator, remains the play caller next season, him staying on the sidelines and not up in the booth is a huge change, and it's a huge thing for the team. Offensive line, number one thing they need to focus on. I think that's fair. If you disagree with me, you think there's another position that must be focused on instead of offensive line, let me know in the comment description below. Or if you're listening in audio form, you can hit me up on Twitter at Christian S. Rao. And I think wide receiver is also a number one. I went through a whole show on Friday saying that there's multiple offers already on the table for 4 different wide receivers. I don't expect that number to decrease at all. I think they're going to even offer even more out there, and especially if we get some bad news about Jayce Brown. Hopefully that's not the case, but just the case that Tre Spivey has entered the portal. Those 4 offers came before Spivey entered the portal. So they had an idea that they were going to either lose one of them or regardless knew that they had to add one regardless, even if Spivey and Brown both stay. So I do think wide receiver is also a need for the Kansas State Wildcats moving into 2025. The fact that they're losing Cephas just to graduation, that's a huge hit. And you just want to have more depth. Now, there's a lot of good players that are in the portal. The biggest one that I'm excited for, and they've already offered JoJo Williams, the American Athletic Conference Freshman of the Year, has entered the portal. That's an exciting player. And if you put him next to Jayce Brown against Keegan Johnson, I mean, that's some pretty fun stuff for Kansas State in 2025. There's some other players that I really like as well. I didn't mention in last week's show, but there's a veteran out there from BYU, Cody Epps. He could be really fun. Could be a new Cephas role, if you will. Maybe he could be inserted into this offense. He has not been offered to my knowledge, but that's just a fun piece to look out if that's the case. But it's really fun what we're going to see this next couple weeks. We are going to be crushing it over here on Locked On Kansas State. We're going to be talking about so many different positions. We're probably going to go through every single position on this roster before the portal's over, talking about each roster breaking or each position, breaking it down player by player, and then asking the question, does more need to be added here to be successful in 2025? We're going to do that in the next couple of weeks. And it might even be some bonus episodes so we can keep you covered and locked in here on Locked On Kansas State. And I think it also depends on who else enters the transfer portal, right? Because as I mentioned, there's only 5 so far. And with the roster moving down to 105, you have to think more are going to enter. And we're going to hear some names just today. They might even be happening while you're listening to this episode. So make sure you keep some notifications on for some of the biggest guys across the industry that cover Kansas State on that recruiting level. On3 does a fantastic job, and so does 24/7 as well. So shout out to them, especially on the Kansas State side. They do a really good job with this aspect right here, especially in the recruiting form, in the transfer portal as well. But I do think it depends on who else enters the portal. But overall, I do think the program will still add about, I'm going to go up and put a limb out here and say 8 players from this portal window before spring ball. I think 8's a good number. I think it's right in the middle of what I was discussing. I think 6 might be a little too low, but I don't think they're going to hit that 10 mark as they have in the past. So I think 8's a solid number where we're going to hit, which does mean more players that are already here could be on the way out as we make that way to 105. That's going to be something that we are not used to. It's going to be really just a 1-year hit, because once they hit 105, they'll be at 105 moving forward. They won't have to worry about this huge roster cut every single year. This is just going to be an impact for this offseason more than any other offseason moving forward. But the coaches hate this rule, and Coach Kleiman came out and stated how much he does not like this rule. He feels like non-football minds made this decision to make this rule, and they didn't talk with the head coaches. They didn't talk with the coaching staffs before making this, and And I think that they're going to really see some sort of impact the way that they are not hoping to see because of this rule of 105 players on the level. Again, it sounds like a ton of players, right? Especially when you talk about jersey numbers, 105 players. Well, there's more than 100 numbers that you can use, right? Or not enough. It's just insane. So regardless, I'm excited to see what happens with this new rule of 105, what that means for players. Are we going to see more two-way players, right? We see that in the Big 12 right now. I'm not sure if we're going to go that far, but it's something just to keep in mind. What are we going to see with this new rule as we head into 25? But regardless, I'm going to stick with 8 players that Kansas State is going to get out of the transfer portal. I think that's a solid number, and I would not be surprised if it goes a little higher, but I would actually be shocked if it stays down on the low side because, regardless, they have to still fill the roster, have to still fill the needs, and they have to improve into 2025. 8-4 is, although they are only one of 8 teams that have won, 8 or more games over the past 4 seasons. 8-4 is not good enough for this program, for this team, for these fan bases. They want to see more, especially after that 7-1 start they had in 2024. Adding those extra pieces to make sure they make that next step in one of the toughest conferences in football. Dare I say the toughest conference in football, the Big 12. They're going to have to do that moving forward. Next, I want to talk about some bowl news because we received that over the weekend. Kansas State's heading to the desert again, but that's okay. We're going to discuss that here as we finish up this episode of Locked On Kansas State. But first, get ready to tackle NFL action, college football action, you name it, with FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get $5 bets and can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to know to place live bets on the NFL, college football, college basketball, and all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest sports, the latest stats, live play-by-play view, and so much more on the same page where you place that exact same bet. It's very easy to use. I love it. It's great on the phone. It's great on desktop. You name it. If you want to put it in a tab behind you or you're at work, it's one of the best things to check out. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win on your first $5 bet. There's some basketball coming up. The Wildcat Classic coming up on Tuesday. Could put your bets in now. Will Kansas State get back on the right track? Hopefully they can do that against Drake. We'll see what happens. But check that out with FanDuel.com. $150 in bonus bets in your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment great with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, let's finish off this episode here on Locked On Kansas State. Thank you so much for making me your first listen every single day. For your second listen, checked out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll is killing it over there. He's discussing the Big 12 conference in its entirety. And if you want some Big 12 love, if you want just no media bias, if you want just some good Big 12 conversations, check out Drake Toll. He's discussing recently the college football playoff rankings. Arizona State made a bye. They are the 4th seed heading into the playoffs, but they're the only one representing our conference. A team like BYU got screwed, and he definitely shares his grievances on the air. So go ahead and check them out on your second listen of the day. As we finish off today, we're going to talk about the Kansas State Wildcats heading back to the desert. They're going to go to Arizona in the Rate Bowl on December 26th. They're going to take on the Big Ten, and they're going to take on Rutgers. Rutgers finished the season 7-5. They had a decent season, and they have a great coach as well. But probably their biggest win of the season was against the Washington Huskies. They won 21-18 as they headed into the Big Ten for the first time. Washington just went to the national championship last year. They're not the same Washington Huskies as we all know from the last season, but they still had some pretty decent wins. They did finish their year off with a win, a commanding win against the Michigan State Spartans, 41-14. They started the year strong. They started the year 4-0, then they went to 4-4, and then they end up 7-5. So they had definitely their ups and downs, but they made their bowl game, and that's really impressive in the Big Ten for Rutgers because that is something that they've had a hard time doing over the past. I mean, there's been some multiple times where they've started their season 4-0, 5-0, and they wind up finishing the season 5-7 because of how tough the Big Ten has been. But they got some Big Ten wins this season, some for the first time in quite some time. I think they got 4 Big Ten wins. Pretty impressive for that staff. Now, when we're going into this game, it's going to be a fun one. It's the 5th appearance for Kansas State in the Rate Bowl, or whatever name they've had been in the past. It's the most of any team for this bowl. They're 3-1. This is their 5th appearance. Again, no other team, no other program in the nation has been to this bowl more than Kansas State. I don't even think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Unfortunately, it's not part of the college football playoffs, so I'm going to bring that as a bad thing in this new format right now. But we're on our way, folks. Don't worry. As for Coach Kleiman, this will be his 5th bowl game for Kansas State. He currently has a 2-2 record, so a win here will put him in that above 500 spot. So you got to think this is a pretty big win, a pretty big bowl game for Coach Kleiman heading in to the offseason and just heading into his career. You don't want to see on his coaching staff that he has a losing bowl record, moving forward. Now, Coach Kleiman has been fantastic for this program. Not saying that a losing bowl record is going to change the way we think about him, but it obviously will look a lot better if it's 3-2 instead of 2-3. So definitely going to be a nice game plan going up. And the remarks that he had heading into the bowl game, he discussed how there wasn't a game plan at the moment, so he wasn't going to be giving anything away, kind of making a joke with some of the media there. But they're still working. They still got to build up. They just found out who they're playing, so obviously it makes sense that they don't have a game plan. But when he discussed his initial thoughts on Rutgers, he said that they're pretty similar to what Kansas State are, especially when he looks at the run game. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to win that run game, and they feel like everything opens up on their offense after that. He also discussed about the potential of players sitting out, and that's something that is going to happen with this new transfer portal thing happening. Players are going to sit out for moving on to new teams. And of course, the NFL draft as well. There's a player, especially that comes to mind, DJ Giddens, the running back for Kansas State. We don't know if he's going to enter the NFL draft, as we mentioned at the beginning of this show. But he did put out a really good story about last year. And he talked about now Dallas Cowboys offensive lineman Cooper Beebe. And he said he played in the bowl game last year in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and it didn't affect his draft stock at all. In fact, he thinks it actually helped his draft stock. So he's hoping to see that, maybe Giddens does play. Maybe he'll help his stock out a little bit more. But he understands that they have to make a decision moving into, they're taking their next step. We don't want to see an injury happen in a bowl game for a player that is trying to make the next step into the NFL. I understand that completely. So it will be a decision up to DJ Giddens, and I hope he makes whatever he decides. I hope it's the right one for him, not for the team in this case. I'm usually a team guy before the aspect of a bowl game that's not going to move you into the national championship contendership, and the fact that you can play on Sundays. And I think we all know that DJ Giddens can play on Sundays. I hope he makes the right decision for him, whether that's him sitting out, getting prepared for the NFL draft, or preparing for this bowl game so he can hopefully move his stock up and get on a better team, get a better draft and better round, whatever that case might be. I hope he does that. The last thing here that I want to talk about from his remarks is one of the media members asked him about, with all the fluidity happening and everything going on across the league right now, will the coaching staff be intact for the Rate Bowl? And Coach Kleiman said, it's hard to answer. And that was his quote, hard to answer at this time. I'm not going to say that there's anything happening right now, because we all know what happened last year. There were some moves in the coaching staff. But how quick he was to answer that, he was prepared for that question, meaning there's probably been some internal conversations on what's going on with the coaching staff. Nothing has happened yet, but you got to think something might change over the next few days, or maybe even after the bowl game. So something to keep in mind as we finish off 2024 season with the Kansas State Wildcats football team, and then hopefully head into 2025 on a good note. We're going to tease a full preview as we get closer to this game. It's, again, the day after Christmas, Arizona. It's going to be a really fun game, December 26th against Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And remember, it's not the path that we were looking for after starting 7-1 in 2024, but it's still a great chance to head into 2025 on a good note. The momentum after this recruiting class win just this past week is all with Kansas State. Hopefully they continue that with the transfer portal. If they get a bowl win and move Chris Kleiman to 3-2, Avery Johnson to 2-0 as a bowl win, I mean, you got to love that. And it's a huge momentum boost moving into 2025 as they look back to get into contention in the Big 12 conference. So that'll wrap it up for here today. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We're going to probably give you 2 episodes tomorrow. We're going to continue this transfer portal. We got so much to discuss, and we're going to give you a bonus episode as well as we preview the Wildcat Classic with the men's basketball team. There's so much to talk about here with the Wildcats. But until then, please subscribe, please like the video, and we'll be back here for another episode soon of Locked On Kansas State.